So thanks, Ivo, for the introduction. Thanks for having me. Feel free to interrupt at any point should you have any questions. So as Ivo mentioned, rather than speaking about networks and implementation, I will give you an overview of some of the frameworks that we've been developing within King's, but as well with close collaborator and the wider community. So I'm not going to take credit for all of it, just a tiny bit. A lot of what is going to be described here is community-based effort. So let's get started. So my understanding is that not all of you are working with medical imaging and not all of you are working with healthcare data. But the challenge and the opportunities that we are facing into the healthcare domain are similar to other fields. Everyone, I think, in this room will agree that, well, there are a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges to address. Starting on the optimistic side, when we deal with healthcare data, there are a very wide range of applications that where we could benefit from AI or AI tools. So the most obvious one are the ones that are going to be towards the left of the screen in front of you. So basically helping with patient care. So helping with diagnostic, assisting doctors in their day-to-day roles, helping with prognosis, but as well we can start going a bit further. We can start trying to, well, accelerating any of the tasks that are usually mundane so that it's becoming more effective, becoming cheaper and less impactful on the healthcare system. But then we can also start optimizing our hospital as a whole rather than just one clinical task or one clinical domain. We could live audit and detect when any abnormalities are occurring in any services so that we can react in real time rather than a month after when there is a debrief meeting occurring. And we can start to optimize the overall hospital and how the patient are going to flow. Just as an exemplar, if we are able to detect that a patient is having a stroke or is having a pathology occurring in one of the departments, we could potentially start predicting that in 2 weeks' time, we will need a bed in another department. It wouldn't be at the level of the individual, but I guess you can start to see how that might work from a probabilistic manner. There you go, that's for you. And so there is a lot that one can do with AI and try to make things better, faster, stronger, and cheaper. And if we look at medical images in particular, because that's kind of what I do for a living, so I'm completely biased, it's very diverse, it's very heterogeneous. We've got a lot of different modalities that are being acquired on patients. So you've got a few exemplars where we've got some planar images. So top left of the wall in front of you, we've got an X-ray. Then we've got some volumetric images next to it, where we've got a CT of the abdominal area. Then on the right-hand side, we've got an MR. Then we've got as well some endoscopic images on the bottom left. We've got videos acquired during surgery, where one can start tracking tools. We've got some functional images where we're able to quantify the amount of any substance within the organ. We've got ultrasound images, and we've got 2D and 3D ultrasound. We've got time component. So it's very versatile. So there are a lot of things that we can do. And I was only describing some of the applications related to medical imaging. If we look at the big picture of what are the data sets that are being acquired within an hospital, it's not only MR, CT, and X-ray. You've got a lot more. You've got histology staining that are being acquired, labeled here as digital pathology. We acquire genetic information. You acquired photograph. You've got a picture of, well, the back of your eyes. We've got photograph of the skins. And we've got as well all of the scalar data that is within the EHR, the electrical health record. And what has been occurring over the past few years is that there has been a lot of papers and a lot of research. If you look at archive, there are a lot that are coming on a daily basis, hour basis, minute basis. A lot of things are coming out. But if you look at the comparison between the number that are in the box here, on one side, we've got like almost 30,000 papers that are published in serious journal. But compared to that, we've got really a handful of a tiny bit that are becoming products that are being approved and then that can effectively apply and be beneficial for the patients. So we've got a massive translation gap. That's the fancy term that people have been using between the amount of research and the investment that is made on one side and the impacts that we've got on the patients there. And there are a lot of reasons for that. So this has been even highlighted during the COVID time, where all of us, we started to say, well, we've got all of this X-ray of the chest. We are going to make very good tool to diagnose, to prognose, to do all of this. And at the end of the day, there has been a lot of papers and articles that just a subset, just 2 of them. But this has been replicated in many, many different fields where, well, a lot of research has been done. Everyone was having a solution, but none of them were effectively used outside of the research environment. So again, we've been able to do some cool stuff, but we haven't been able to translate it. We've got awesome networks that are working on our validation sets, but as soon as we change one parameter, everything breaks down and we can't really make it a product. That's a negative side. It's like, it's not that bad. And when we come back to the imaging, we've got a lot of challenges to address. And that's where it's great to have networks that are dealing with pristine images like we do in research. But if we look at the data that we acquired within normal and routine clinical practice, it's not as sparkly. We've got a lot of artifacts within these images. So the 4 images that you can see on the right of the screen here is us going to a PACS, which is an archiving system where all of the images of an hospital are, and asking for, if we were to ask for T1 weighted MR of the brain, that's what we could obtain. Just exemplar, or normal T1 weighted MR of the brain. So you can see on the top left that, well, one hemisphere is missing. It's been replaced by liquid. You've got heavily artifacted images on, oh, sorry. Can I? Nothing personal. Then you've got a lot of movement artifacts. Then you've got even CTs. You've got, and on the bottom, you don't even have a brain anymore. You've got the cervical area. And we've had images of arm, legs, and all of that. So data is really dirty, and we need to have a great effort of curation. I mean, you're all familiar with the garbage in, garbage out. This applies here as well. We need to make sure that we've got good data so that our awesome algorithms, they can produce good results. So that means that we've got data, we need algorithm, we need to be able to curate the data as well. And we all want to deal with large data sets, so we can't do that manually. We need to have ways to automate. And so when we were sitting down and thinking of what are the bits that are required so that we can close this translation gap and we can make AI a reality in a clinical environment, we can make our hospital AI enabled, we identify building pillars. So we've got a lot of data. If you look at the scale of an hospital, they've been collecting data for a long time. It's all stored within various systems. We need to be able to extract and interpret the data and leverage all of these data sets. So we need the different systems to be able to operate together so that we can pool information. We are dealing with patient data. We don't want to go back to the Wild West here. We need to be rigorous. We need to make sure that we follow regulations. And we make sure that we need to involve the patient. So that's a strong component as well. Whatever we do nowadays, we need big GPUs. We don't necessarily need to have like a Cambridge one always available to us, but at least we need to have computational capabilities within the hospital. We want to have AI model that are working, but as well that are safe. They don't break down and do complete misprediction for no obvious reason. We need to have AI that's fair. We need to be AI that is unbiased. So we need good model. We need to maximize collaborative research. So that the research that is done here, we should be able to leverage with the research that is done up north in London, where is Matthias? In Birmingham, in anywhere in the UK. We need, ideally, we've got all of this silo of data where we are all trying to solve the same issue. Can we have a way to federate all of this information and collaborate? And finally, we need to be able to deploy the tools. If I've got a tool, it's great if it's working on my laptop with my 3 data sets, but does not make it work prospectively of any incoming data. But the only way I can check that if I deploy it into the clinical environment and I effectively test it. So we need to be able to do clinical trials or clinical evaluation. So I won't be speaking about all of these points in the few minutes that we've got together, but I will be focusing on mostly the data operability and how do we go from having good data that we can extract. How do we write good code for software development, and as well, how do we have tools for collaborate in an easy manner and as well deployed in our ecosystem. So that's the three points that I will be addressing today mostly. So whatever code we write, trying to see if I'm going to be rude by saying it or if it's okay. Well, I'll take myself as an example. I am not a software developer by training. If I do my research, initially, I want to be able to produce results, and then I want it to work on my data sets, and the code is not really to the quality that you will have if you were to write a product. There is no quality management system. There is no strong evaluation. I don't think that you all have 100% coverage on your code. That's where I don't want to be rude there, but really, on average, statistically, it's unlikely based on prior experience. So, but we don't want necessarily to have to do all of that, because that's not the fun part. That's not where the stats are, the probability are. So if we can have some other people doing it with us in collaboration with us, and we can work to create a platform that will enable us to write good code in an efficient manner, that will be ideal. And that will enable to accelerate the translation to the clinic. So we want to be able to train on large data sets. That's the second point that I will mention. So where it's great that we've got nicely curated research data, but as soon as our algorithms that are trained on largely curated and nice data sets are going to see real data, which are dirty, which have noise, which have heterogeneity, it's very likely going to not work as well as expected. And the data is very diverse when it comes to healthcare. We've got imaging on one side, you've got everything into the electrical health records, you've got all of your biomarker, you've got a lot of different data points in different of data shapes. So we need to be able to integrate all of that. And once we've got that, we've validated, we need to be able to deploy it into an environment. So I will mostly focus on the 4 red boxes or red arrows that are on your screen. So trying to go through the journey from, well, I've got an awesome idea of how I'm going to change the world and improve clinical practice in a way, up to developing a product on the right-hand side of the screen above my head there. So we've got tools and platform for the purpose of development. So MONAI is one of them. That's the one we are using, and that's the one we are developing. I will say a few words about that. Then the middle part is about how do we organize the data so that it's really easy to be accessed, easy to leverage on the data set. FLIP. The data access, data collection, I will mention something called XNAT. FLIP stands for Federated Learning Interoperability Platform. So that's something that has been developed by AI Center for Value-Based Healthcare, which is made of a consortium of hospitals, university, and commercial entities to be able to, train data in a federated manner across multiple sites. And then on the right-hand side, we've got something called AIDE. AIDE stands for AI Deployment Engine, which is basically the platform that hooks into the clinical system and where we can deploy our clinical tools, our AI models. So that's readily, they are made available in the clinical practice. Before I keep going, are there any questions? Does anyone wants to raise anything, or should I keep going? Keep going. Yeah. So MONAI. MONAI is a medical open network for artificial intelligence. Basically, it's you might all be familiar with platform or modules such as PyTorch. Within PyTorch ecosystem, it's often the case that you will have PyTorch as a global entity, which is just generic tool, and then communities will add their domain expertise and create a kind of a derive module or derive platform. So MONAI, this is that for radiology AI, which is for image processing, medical image processing. So basically, it builds on the top of PyTorch using other modules such as Ignite for organization, doesn't really matter, but it doesn't reinvent the wheel. When the wheel is there, we spin it as much as we can. But when we've got a missing wheel, that's where MONAI is kicking in. We are putting all of our community and medical image community expertise and know-how. We are trying to put that within MONAI because we've got specificity, which makes a medical image different from a photograph of the street. We've got know-how, we've got expertise. We know that an intensity is often coming from physics, so it's got properties behind it. We know that when we go from one unit in space, there is potentially a millimeter equivalence, so it's all in physical space. So orientation of an image will have its importance, will be often related to the anatomy of the body that is being imaged. So all of that are the tools that are being contributed into MONAI. With the idea is that we've got a lot of entities that are contributing to MONAI. So we've got universities, we've got commercial entities, we've got large company, NVIDIA is contributing a lot to the MONAI platform. What did I say? Well, that should do. At least this one. But it's really, and then we've got, so that it's really a community initiative. We've got representative of different groups that are part of the governance of MONAI, that are giving the big direction, and that are also listening to all of the contributors. But overall, the aim is that if we've got the tools that have all of the components that are well implemented and developed in a harmonized and standardized way, as a user, I can just put the different blocks, like playing Lego pieces. I know that every block is well implemented. I create my Lego model, and then that's it. I've got my tool. And it's then really easy for me to develop. It's really easy to do some analysis and compare the contribution of my block, because I can just remove it and plug something else instead. So it's accelerating the development. It's about accelerating the validation. It's about accelerating at the end as well the translation to the clinic. So as I say, there are a large number of entities that are consortium members, so they are all contributing time to MONAI one way or another, whether that's governance, whether that's teaching, whether that's actually writing some of the code. And MONAI has been taking up quite nicely. That's just propaganda slide here. But just it's really the impact that it's having at the moment. The ones that are quite that I like the most is this one, the one at the bottom right. So what that tells us is that if we go on GitHub, there are over 1,700 projects that are using MONAI to build on the top of it. So if I'm creating my, I don't know, my awesome net, I don't have to re-implement everything from scratch. I can just import MONAI and then build on the top of that. And if we go on GitHub and the open one, we've got 1,700 plus people that are doing that, or 1,700 projects. MONAI has been downloaded a lot of time. And my feel about it is that it's not the only package initially that existed for radiology and AI, but this one has really taken over all of the other one. And I think it's really because it's based on a community. There is not a lot of people are contributing. It's really versatile in what it can do, because we've got people that are focusing on digital pathology, like we've got people that are focusing on video stream, like we've got people that are focusing on standard structural MR. So it's really quite diverse on what it's effectively covering. So when designing MONAI, to make sure that it was something that would work for everyone, there was, well, there still is, it's trying to follow a few concepts. So ideally, we don't want people to have to, well, sign with their blood that they are going to use MONAI. If I use MONAI, doesn't mean that I'm completely within a silo. I can use a function from MONAI and then a function from another tool. So we wanted to be able to make sure that it was composable. You can take a brick from there, take a brick from there. It doesn't, but if everyone is following the same organizations that PyTorch or the same type of interface that PyTorch is following, then it should be really straightforward to compose all of these different components. We try to make an effort so that if you just need to add a function, for example, a loss for your optimization, you can just build on the top of what is existing and making your own customization. I already mentioned that we are trying to make it domain specific. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about making sure that we add what our community rely on and making sure that we've got all of the models that are considered as state of the art within our community, so that if I write a good paper, decent network, it's easy for me to compare it to all of the state of the art without having to re-implement everything and without having 12 reviewers telling me, yes, but maybe you didn't tune the hyperparameters in the same way. We've all seen that. But they are tuned in a consistent manner by the persons that actually produce the original implementation, and then we can do some what we think is fair comparison and making everything reproducible. As I say, we are working very closely with NVIDIA. They are doing substantial effort towards MONAI. This is great. That means that we've got dedicated developers that are looking at the, let's say, the most complicated part of the software development, which we barely touched on as user. The MONAI code is optimized to run on multiple GPUs. It's going to spread the load across multiple GPUs. But as a user, I don't need to know about it. Yeah, I just know it's happened. It's magic. It's brilliant. But it's completely abstracted, trying to make it simple. And as well, we try to have a lot of documentation so that any user of any level can come in and start using the tool. And then as well, MONAI is trying to cover kind of the full life cycle of an algorithm, or the full data flow of an algorithm. At the beginning, we've got mechanism to load data. Usually medical images data are rather large. So you want to minimize I/O from disk because it's costing you a lot of time. So we've got caching mechanisms that are relying on some of the property of medical imaging that are embedded within it. But if we move from left to right, we think all of the workflows that are required so that we can develop, train, and then deploy an algorithm within a clinical environment. So you start from the data. Then if you need to do some supervised training, we've got tools to automate or semi-automate some of the data annotation so that we can label our data. So I will come back to that with an example. Then we've got repositories that are dedicated to the training, different aspects of training, splitting, training, testing, validation, set, all of the scheduler of your learning rate, all of that is embedded within there. And as well, all of the cores, components that makes the network, the different layer, you can plug them the way you want, plug the loss you want, the regularization you want. And then once you've trained your model, you can package your tool into an application. And then up to the bottom right, then it gives you capability to then deploy it within a clinical environment with a lot of orchestration with a different system from the hospital. So basically trying to cover the full spectrum of use, starting from the data on the left-hand side up to deploying it into a clinical environment. I'm not going to go through that, but that's basically MONAI is organized into a multiple repository where there I'm showing you some of the components that are constituting MONAI core, which as the name suggests, sorry, it's a bit of a lack of creativity here. It's core, that's the repositories that all of the other one are building on. So if I start at the bottom of the screen without reading them, we've got basically our Lego bricks. All of the different components. I will have the different architecture. I will have the different losses. I will have the different optimization scheme. I will have the different scheduler. I will have, well, anything I can. All of the reconstruction algorithm, everything, all of the transform, everything is within there. Then you can create your network by taking the bricks you want. Now you've got a bigger and a more meaningful Lego set. And then from there, then you can orchestrate the optimization. So that's how do you want to train, what how to train your network. Everything is we try to simplify it. And then we've added as well a lot of tutorials and documentation of the state-of-the-art algorithm, how to use them, when to use them, what are the expectations, how to get started with any of these approaches. And then at the top, once we've got all of that, that's what I was mentioning, is that we are able to, you can do a MONAI, what we refer to as a MONAI bundle, so that you've got your application completely containerized, and then it's a lot easier to deploy. And that's the MONAI deploy. That's the same thing I just said, but with different colors here, where once you've trained your model using I always say simple. It's simple when you've done it for 10 years, but not necessarily initially. I do appreciate that. Once you've got your application, we're able to using JSON file or JSON file actually, but you can have other things. We're able to redescribe fully the network, the architecture, how it's been trained, and then package it so that you can make it an application and then deploy it into your environment. I will show you an example after. And then there are as well all of the parts that will integrate with your clinical system, so that then you've got orchestration of your apps on the top of that. And by orchestration, I mean we detect that a T1 weighted MR is acquired for suspicion of dementia. Beam, we start the container that should run the tool that is related to diagnostic of dementia, for example. And I'm just going to show you, this project, but that just as an exemplar. So that's something that we've done without developing further the functionality of MONAI. We just took the bricks as they were, and then same thing, is not going to like it if I say simply, but we plug the bricks together to design an algorithm. And in this case, what Trin has been focusing on for part of his PhD is to be able to create a prognosis tool for patients that were within a clinical trial related to brain tuberculosis, so meningitis TB. So what is happening is that at the moment, imaging is not used. So people are mostly relying on blood sample, on protein level, on clinical marker to try to be able to do some diagnostic and then the prognosis. What we try to look at here is who within the cohort is likely to die within 2 months after the first acquisition baseline. And we wanted to be able to compare what happens if I just use the clinical data, what happens if I just use the imaging data, and then what happens if I combine the both information. So we've been using a very shallow network at the bottom, and then a standard ResNet type of architecture at the top, pulling everything into the common latent space, and then being able to do prediction. But we didn't implement any of the components. It was mostly about taking components and plugging them together there. But some of the developments that we are doing is we are, in this case, not adding a specific network architecture, but just focusing on one point, so that then all of the users will be able to leverage on it. And this particular one, it's something that Ben Murray has been working on, and others, is this concept of lazy resampling. Which is very simple conceptually. It just happens that none of us are doing it. And so when dealing with medical images, we don't have the size of ImageNet usually. So we need to use all of our tricks to be able to make sure that it generalizes. And one of the tricks is to be able to do a lot of augmentation. We will take the input data and we will apply, let's say, geometric transform to it. And then we try to use that to have models that generalize better. But our augmentation pipeline usually they are made of multiple steps. You're going to translate a bit your image, you're going to rotate it, you're going to zoom in and out, you're going to apply some elastic transformation. And each time you apply a step in the current implementation, at least within our domain, your image is being resampled, always. So that means that effectively, if I follow my pink line at the top, I'm going to my end result on the right hand side is going to be the resampled version of a resampled version of a resampled version of a resampled version. Oh no, but that's the overlay. And this idea of lazy resampling comes from programming where we've got lazy operation. We only apply this operation when we need them. And we can do exactly the same. Because if I'm applying a transformation and then a rotation, well, why can't I just do that in one pass? I can apply my rotation and my transformation in the same way. Just a MONAI coordinate system. So what Ben did is modified all of the transform within MONAI so that they could be called in a lazy way. And by doing that, we are minimizing the number of resampling that we need to do. And again, sounds simple, quite heavy on the implementation to make it work in a way that's actually efficient and effective, but the user don't see it. It's just a flag. Is it lazy? Yes, no, that's it. And then we try to assess the impact that could have on your processing pipelines. So before doing it on a full training, we look at individual components. So what we can see here is that we took an image on the left, and then we applied an augmentation pipeline. So simple. We zoom, we flipped along one axis, we do some rotation, we do a transpose basically. We do some more zooming, and we do some arbitrary rotation. And we do that on a full image, and then on just a patch, because that's the two approaches that we use when we've got two large images. And just to illustrate, I'm going to click on this image. This one is just to illustrate the concept of resampling to an extreme. That's never the case. But I'm going to take this image, apply a 5-degree rotation, take the result 5-degree rotation, take the result 5-degree rotation. And this is what I obtained. Sorry, the other way. You can see that there I'm blurring my image. And what's happening by blurring, there it's obvious that something is not ideal. But it's not to this extreme, because we don't do 100 of this resampling, but still has an impact. And what we try to do is to quantify how our information is basically lost as we do the multiple resampling before quantifying its impact. So what you can see on the right-hand side of this table is the entropy. The higher the value, the more random your information is, basically. And we can see that by doing multiple resampling, we are getting more and more random information, meaning that we are removing signal, removing contrast. Which makes sense. It's like it's not unexpected. If I do multiple resampling, at least there, it says what's written, or it shows what's written on the tip, basically. Then we looked at something else. So, because one of the common tasks when it comes to medical imaging is this concept of segmentation. So we just want to segment area of interest. So the simplest way to do that is to use a supervised approach. On one side, you've got your input image. On the other side, like that, you've got the associated segmentation. And when you do augmentation, you apply the same transformation to both components, your image, and then your associated label, your annotation, your segmentation. Your image, you're going to typically use linear interpolation because that's fast and quick. Nearest neighbor, it's all discretized. So, segmentation, it's discretized. You've got discrete values. So you're not going to use something linear. You're going to use nearest neighbor. And then the same issue occurs is that the more I apply, the more I'm going to change the more transformation I apply, the more I'm going to distort my input. But it's going to be even worse when we look at nearest neighbor interpolation, because I'm going to even start breaking the topology. So same image, but this time with nearest neighbor interpolation. I'm doing exactly the same. Again, there I go extreme just to show what it can be. But what we wanted to do to quantify is that how much of an impact it may have. So the way we've done it is that we took a region of interest, and then on this region of interest, we had a segmentation. We applied an augmentation pipeline, and then we apply the same augmentation pipeline back. Ideally, if I go towards eyeball and then I go in the opposite direction, I should come back to the same. So the error should be 0. But what we've done is that if I go towards eyeball and then I come back, there, because of this resampling, I will create an offset. And this offset, we quantify it by the degree of overlap between the image and the same image doing a round trip. And we can see that with the same augmentation pipeline that was described in the previous slides, where we've got 4 or 5 steps, not too many of them, we've got a lot of information drop. So there, dice score is a measure of overlap that's commonly used in medical imaging. 0 means no overlap, 1 means perfect overlap. And you can see that when we use the traditional approach, which is multiple resampling, we've got a significant drop. So that means that in the image and its segmentation are potentially diverging. So that will impact on your ground truth that you're optimizing against. Still occurring when you lazy resampling, but this is less and thus less impactful. And then final one on this one. So we took one common task, which is brain tumor segmentation on an open source challenge called BRATS. And then we use a standard implementation. UNet is something quite popular within our field. That's an autoencoder type of shape with some skits in between. Doesn't really matter. But we took one common network used in our domain. And then we tried to do multiple runs. So same network, same hyperparameter. We freeze 25 seeds for the random initialization from the random generator. We run it 25 times on each. And then those are the results that we obtain. So we can see that using lazy resampling, we've got something where we've got a faster rate of convergence and we reach a lower value on our validation loss. So it's making it faster because there is a lot less resampling, which is a computationally expensive operation. But the important part is not really the time, because it's not going to be a fast process in our domain. Whether it takes 2 days or 2 days and a half is not going to change the world here. I'm still not going to be nowhere near real time. But we've got better results, and we've got as well results that are more stable. So that's how we are contributing to MONAI. So we are using it, but as well contributing to some of these Lego bricks so that everyone else can use them. Are there any questions? And last one on MONAI, and I'll accelerate a bit, is that we've had a team under the leadership of someone called George Cardozo that has been focusing on generative model. So they've been using generative model for a lot of different applications. And what we are now doing is that now that their networks are somehow mature, well validated, all of it is being translated to MONAI. So that's just an example of what this can do. So in this case, the network doesn't really matter. That's a BKVA. So where you've got your autoencoder and then some token, it doesn't really matter too. But that's a way for us to be able to create generative model, and we're able to reach resolutions that we couldn't before. The image that you can see in front of you, the one that's moving, that's not a real brain. That's basically something that's randomly generated by the model. And if you're familiar with T1 weighted MR, I think it looks quite okay. So same thing here. One of them is fake, one of them is real. Let's raise some hands. Who will say the fake one is at the top? Yeah. Who will say the fake one is at the bottom? No, just because I know, so it's really hard. But that's showing you that we are able to reach resolutions that are quite good. This model was trained on 20,000 subjects on a supercomputer. And it took ages to train. So it's not something that I'm going to run on my laptop, nor even my phone. But that's the resolution that we are able to reach. And then, so generating a fake image on its own, not really useful, but we can have more application here. Then we can do conditioning of all of these generative models. So there, what you can see at the top is fake. But what we are asking is that we are putting a conditioning on the size of the ventricle in the middle. Ventricle, that's a butterfly type of shape in the middle of the brain, and those views are like that actually, where it's basically it's filled in with liquid. And conditioning on that, we are able to generate realistic image. And at the bottom, you've got conditioning on the overall size of the brain with respect to the total volume within the cranium. So we are able to start playing and generating a lot of data, like we are already doing in computer vision, where we can generate photograph of anything we'd like, just with the right token. So we are able now to do the same on volumetric images in 3D. And then we can use these tools as just an exemplar to be able to do some either outlier detections or far out of sample detection. So in this case, let's not go into detail about the table, but what it shows there is that we've got two types of generative model, one based on a latent transformers, the other one based on a diffusion model. And then we are able to, with very high accuracy, in our testing sets, in their testing sets, they were able to actually classify all of these images as outlier or as the expected data type successfully. So really, so these generative models are pushing it, and all that being used to generate all of the results that I showed you is in a repository called MONAI Generative. And because we feel it's mature, now it's being translated by the teams that developed it, as well as some of the software developers that are dedicated to MONAI core. So that means that there is a lot of refactoring and integration with the other components that is occurring. But in the end, that means that everyone will have access to it and will be able to merge it and with all of the other components. I'm speaking way more than I thought I would. Let's speed up. Are there any questions? So now we've got tools so that we can write good code, hopefully, and we can easily and accelerate the pace at which we are doing our development and our validation. So now we need data. So this is just an example of the setup that we've got within our school, the School of Biomedical Engineering and Imaging Sciences at King's. So where we are fortunate enough to be, from a network standpoint, co-located with our hospital, Guy's and St. Thomas, just in front of Big Ben. And this is the setup that we've got. So we've got, on the left-hand side, we've got the different scanners, mostly MR. That's where some of the research is being done. This data is sent to the hospital for clinical purposes, but as well, this data is sent to our own packs. On these packs, all of the data is identifiable. We don't want to show that to any of the researcher, meaning that we've got extra and automated steps. All of the data, as soon as it arrives into the one labeled BMEA packs, is automatically pushed using DICOM protocol to what is referred to as an anonymization node. Oh, the actual acronym. Picture Archive Something System. FACS is basically, it's an archiving tool within which you can store data, store imaging data, and it's actually relying on a protocol which is called DICOM, which is a, let's say, file format in which we store medical image. Okay. What's a C? Computer. So the data is automatically going from this, let's say, clinical archive where we've got all of the identifiable information. It's going to be pushed automatically to another anonymization node, and then it's going to be received within this interface, which is called XNAT, which is a web-based archiving system, but dedicated for research. So automatically, as soon as the dataset is acquired, it's made available to the researchers that have a good credential without having them to do anything. We minimize, I mean, we speed up the process, but we also minimize the risk of human error. Well, except if one of the developers made an error, but it's the same error for everything. And it's easy to pick. And then on the top of that, I will come back to that, we attach some compute so that we can also automate some of the processing. Let's keep that. We've deployed a system to be able to transfer data from the hospital as well to our research system. So in our case, from GSTT and King's Health College, King's College London. King's College Hospital, that makes sense. King's Health College, that's a new one. So to be able to transfer the data in the same way. So our clinical collaborator, after we've done all of the ethics required, are able to pull the information within one of the similar systems, being able to anonymize the data. And then we've got automated sync through the interface from the hospital side to the KCL side. Again, we don't need to have like CDs or hard drives or USB stick to transfer the data. So it's all automated, and then that means that it speed up a lot of the process. And then on the system, we are able to containerize processing and then have automated deployment of it. So on the left-hand side, you don't have to read it, but it's just, we will have container style of environment, which we are able to deploy, and then put some rules. As soon as a T1 weighted MR of the brain arrives, I'm going to trigger a container, and then all it will result in what it is here. It will parcellate the brain into 200 regions of interest that have got volumetric information, and everything will be in the same place. My original data, my derived data, and anything associated with it. And we also store clinical information within. So then we come to the fact that we are able to transfer a lot of data, but then we've got this garbage in, garbage out setup. So this is just one example of the project I'm working on. So that's a project on musculoskeletal, focusing on the spine and lumbar fusion. So we've been fortunate to pull almost 14,000 patients, data from 14,000 patients. If you look at all of the time points that they are having, for these 14,000 patients, we've got 22,000 CT, 135,000 MR, 26,000 plus 8,000 X-ray or digital radiology. Meaning that I'm not going to review all of them and check if they are correct. I'm not going to annotate all of them. It takes a lot of time. So we need to be able to be smart about it. And that's where we try to also use some automation. So without going into details here, we are using MONAI. We've been developing a tool to do spine segmentation that is working well. If people are interested, we can discuss that after. But we packaged it into a bundle, and then that means that because it was a bundle following the MONAI interface, then we've been able to use it in what we developed as well, which is called MONAI Label. So that's a tool that's doing semi-automated annotation for us. So we packaged it into a MONAI bundle. We deployed it within a 3D slicer, which is interface here. And what it does is that it will automatically open a scan that hasn't been segmented. It will give you a tentative segmentation based on the model that has been trained to date. Then you will add some further annotation, some edits. So you will say this area is good, this area is not good, this area should be segmented. And then you submit your correction. The algorithm will take that into account and then redefine its infer solution. And you do that until you're happy with the solution. So it's a lot faster than having to segment everything manually, which will take a lot of time. And then we've been developing tools to do semi-automated annotation. So that's just to localize the vertebra, to add a landmark to the vertebra. So we've been doing quite a few there. Gonna skip that. Yeah. We've been doing more on data curation and how to deal with very large scale data sets. So one of we are getting towards the end. So something that has been developed as well under the initiative of the AI Center for Value-Based Healthcare is a strong push for federated learning as opposed to centralizing the data. The two options that we've got when we want large data set is that, well, everyone is someone is putting all of the data into a common place, and then we can use this data, or instead of moving the data, we need to move the compute where the data is and as well move the model. And when we were discussing what route to take, we really thought that there were technical complications to do it in a federated manner, but there were as well a lot of advantages for everything else in a way. So for any of you, if you try to transfer medical data from one institution to another, it's not the most fun you will ever have in your life. If you haven't done it, ask Ivor to do it for you. He loves it. It's complicated, while moving a GPU and moving a model is a lot more straightforward. So we took this approach where data doesn't have to be shared across institution. It stays where it is. We just move the model, because we can't even anonymize the data in most of the cases. And if we truly anonymize the data, it could be that we remove information that could be very useful for the task that we want to achieve. So we don't necessarily want to have all of the data anonymized and everything removed. And I'm not speaking about names. Obviously, the name, we don't really need it, but I'm speaking about potential marker, blood marker, and things like that. So having that in mind, we developed FLIPs. FLIPs is basically a system that enables federated learning, and that's hooked into the clinical environment. So it's going to hook into the X-record health record on the left-hand side. It's going to hook into the PACS. So at the top, you've got the clinical system. In the middle layer is a buffer that we are creating. So where we are reformatting and curating the data on the fly, and reorganizing it with nice ontology so that we basically label every data set. And then we can have our dedicated server within the environment that is going to train model. So once we've trained this model, then we are moving to the last part, which is the deployment engine. There, what it's doing, it's relying on the same infrastructure that I showed before. It's basically going to connect to your PACS. It's going to connect to your all of your clinical systems, really, that you need to have access to. Going to pull the data, and then it's going to enable you to deploy your algorithm so that it can be run with the clinician collaborator, by the clinician collaborator. There is an admin interface. There is a lot of that. We also we are in the process of we've developed in the process of developing this app store type of concept, where instead of being on your phone and developing an app to play a game or whatever you want, you will go on this store, and then you develop you download the application that has been validated before, and then you've got it automatically installed within your clinical environment. Yeah, I'll finish with that. So this is just an exemplar video of the first project that we've deployed. That we're concentrated to show. So what's effectively occurring is that first there is a detection that a CT has been acquired. Then we can send this data to AIDE. AIDE will automatically detect this is a CT. I'm going to run the pipelines that are associated with AIDE CT, generate the report. The report are going to be pushed back to PACS. And then you can see that you would have something like that automatically generated. So you don't necessarily need the clinician to click on the button. It will be there once they reach the console to be able to do the report. So all of the metadata has been derived and has been presented for them. And then there is as well all of the parts about how do you administrate such a system, who's got access to what, who can validate, and how many use has been made, and all of these things are also integrated within the system. Okay, took a bit longer than expected. I apologize for that. So I try to give you an overview of some of the platforms that we are working on. It's not giving you the full pictures because we haven't touched upon the legislation aspect. We haven't spoken about quality management system. That's extra layer that we need to add on the top of that. But I think it's clear that there are a lot of applications within the healthcare domain. We've got a lot of data. I mean, data is the new oil, some people are saying. We've got a lot of data, and we need to be able to leverage on this data so that they can benefit to the patients. But just writing an algorithm, it's a good start. If we don't have that, we are nowhere near the end. But it shouldn't be the end of the story. But going from a working algorithm to a commercialized product, that's a massive gap. And we are not going to do it all, but what we are trying to do is to put all of the tools and the platforms that are going to help people to go through this journey so that we maximize and we accelerate the pace of translation to the clinic. So I presented a few projects. None of them are single individual driven. We've got some community-based, really. We've got MONAI, XNAT. People are contributing to those from all over the world. And then we've got as well some large initiative. The AI Center for Biomedical Healthcare is one of them. But within this initiative, we had many companies many hospitals as well as many universities involved. So yeah, a lot to do, a lot is there, but nowhere near the end. And thank you.
Yeah, so if I may ask a legal question. Yeah, so
Right.
There are lots of hierarchies of developers involved here. I mean, starting with PyTorch, the basic MONAI elements, and then applications built on top of it. So if something's deployed into a healthcare system, where obviously there's always some potential of it going wrong, and then there being any kind of legal proceedings. Where do you see this going in terms of warranties, liabilities to different developers?
Okay, let's start with that. So everything that has been presented here is open source. So I mean, I'm no expert in this domain, but from my little experience, that would be considered a soup in a way. So that means that responsibility wouldn't be on this individual. What we've got on the top of that, at least within our center, we've got an effective quality management system where all of these components are being reviewed towards the translation of a product. And in terms of liability, I mean, that's the same issue that we've got with self-driving car. Is that the manufacturer? Is that the driver? Is that, well, whoever it can be there? Is it the clinician that uses the tool? Is it the person that's selling the product? Is it the responsibility of the hospital for buying it? The guy in court have to settle on this one, and then I think I'll be able to give you a good answer. But at the moment, it's very vague, and that's why we've got also issue with translating some of the tools that we are doing, because there is as well a gap on the legislation. So at the moment, I mean, I'm sure some of you are working on continuous learning, where we've got models that are learning as they go, they are updating themselves. We can't commercialize that because we need to have snapshots that are approved, that are validated. We can do update every day if we want, but it has to be done through the QMS. So we've got a gap. There are a lot of unknowns there. I'm afraid I can't.
Yeah, no, I understand that. That was quite helpful already. But just a quick one. That how is this all licensed? Is that some sort of open, easy license, MIT or something?
It's an Apache 2 or an similar.
GPL2?
No, Apache 2.
Apache.
Brave.
Yeah.
No GPL. No, it's open.
GPL would mean you wouldn't be able to commercialize it. Like.
But no, there is one that's like if you change anything, you have to send it back, or it's no, that's MIT. Like I think that's Apache 2. I think.
Yeah.
Or Creative. One of the open ones.
Okay. But so open your meaning,
you can take it, make a product, and that's it. You can do whatever you want with it. Just don't choose a developer. That's it. But that's pretty much it. What the license is there.
I have two questions. One is I mean, that's going to be very quick, I'm sure. This is only for medical images like FMR, structural MRI X-ray thing. You don't do things like MEG or EEG, right?
Signal. No. I mean, at the end of the day, it depends which question which part you're referring to. MONAI. Well, just 1D signal, 2D signal, 3D signal. I personally don't.
But is that? I mean, there are some.
But we've got some ECG data projects.
It's slightly different. It's a bit different, right? I'm just curious about MEG.
No, some people are using MEG. So we've got people working on epilepsy, where they are going to record MEG to know where is the foci of the shortcut.
The pipeline applies to EEG or MEG data.
You can apply it to anything you want. As I said, it's like Lego. If you've got your favorite MEG toolkits, let's say, then you can have you plug it, and then you can put any layers behind that. So it's, I mean, the aim is to try to be as composable as possible and not create a silo that people have to can't get out, and anything that's not within our silo will need to be redeveloped. So it's really trying to leverage on the very large ecosystem and environment that is around PyTorch so that you can pull from the different components that are there.
Time scales are different, right? So, I mean, you can't really compare looking at MG with looking at the various slices because all.
No, of course, but you can. So it's like if you look at the network standpoint, we've got the same with ultrasound. So. Yes. 2D plus time is not the same as 3D, but it's like if you look at fMRI, it's 3D plus time. It's not necessarily 4D, and even within the type of things that Ivor and I were doing when we were young, it's like even at looking at the structural image, because you may have very fine in-plane resolution, and out of plane you will have a very large gap, and that means that potentially you will have different regularization across the dimension. So you basically customize it the way you want. So I will just see it as a number of input channels. And then the way, if we are speaking about standard convolution, you apply the convolution along the axis the way you want. You are able to play with those details.
So for example, things like beamforming, which typically would be using MEG, that's typically not something you need to be concerned with when you do images. So I'm just wondering whether that would have to be.
No, you got that in complexity, but that would be, it depends where you want to fit it. You mean from a construction standpoint? Like
yeah, to go from
it's not something I do because for me that's all processing. So I can't give you a straight answer, but I don't see why not.
Okay, well that's good.
I don't know. You're doing some CBCT or
No, I guess it's depends if someone's already had a go at implementing a tool, translating from a tool into MONAI already.
Or if they are compatibles. I mean, nowadays most of the things are based on Python anyway, so it's very likely that. Yeah. So even, I mean, we before MONAI, so NVIDIA had Clara, and we had Nifty Toolkits, and we decided to both stop and to merge to create MONAI, and then all of the partners arrived. But everything was before based on TensorFlow, but Python from Python, it's not the most complicated one. You just change the order of your input outputs, and it's not as simple as that, obviously.
Second question is more in relation to the very start of your talk when you were saying, translational research, lots of stuff is being produced, translation is very weak. I'm just curious. So if I'm a patient at the eyes hospital, how much of this is actually used in my daily care? And the reason I ask this is because I'm not convinced that this is only about the infrastructure, because it's also about training of doctors and acceptance by the doctors. Yeah. Right? So how would you say, what's the real contribution? What's really slowing the uptake? Is it really the lack of this, or the fact that NICE needs to...
It's all of it. It's all of it, and it's all of it. And one doctor is going to be different from another one. It's like, yes. So some of my PhD students are effectively radiologists. And they're obviously super keen. And you've got some other people that...
is one thing.
No, I think that
doing it.
They are doing it, they are validating it. So all of these tools are not in the initial part of the project. What we were lacking is the fact that we could do prospective evaluation of the tools. But in order to do prospective evaluation of the tools in a real environment, it's not necessarily about taking the data out, running your tools and putting it back. It was really developing within the clinical environment so that you can do evaluation of the accuracy of the tool, but as well, all of the other components. How long does it add or how long does it save to be able to have this tool on the top of what is already there? How do you perturbate the clinical workflow? How should you change that? We tend to do a lot of math because we like math, and then at the end we try to find an application. And so what we need to make sure, if we have to deploy it, we need to make sure that it's tailored to the needs, and that's really pushing all of that. But you're right, adoption is one of the big issues as well. But if we are not deploying it to the environment, we can't even starting to speak about adoption. So
I
it's
guess
good.
my point is, can you actually deploy without knives at moving this? That's my question.
Oh, it's been changing with UKCA. Before you could have a look. You're recording all of that, right? Be careful. Before.
Pause the recording.
No, it's okay. No, it's just like I don't think I'll be right in what I'm saying, but it's just to give you the idea. Before, you could have a local extension that if it's research that's been developed within an institution, you could use it without FDA, CE. But I think this, no, I'm sure this has changed. But you will. So if you've got a clinical trial, whether it's a drug or it's a tool, because that's still everything we do is still a medical device, you will need to go through the phase. So it will be, if you deploy within an environment that's under an ethics, and that would be for the evaluation. So as part of the AI Center, a big part is as well about having the regulatory aspect simplified for the user, because that's as well complicated, and well, you can't really do it if you don't know what to do, but no one tells you what to do. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg here. So we try to go through the process a few times and try to democratize it in a way, at least within our institution. Following you.
Any more questions? Anyone?
Cool. Thanks for your time. Apologies, I completely ran over.